Welcome to the Reinvention Show with your host, Carol Wayne. Today, Carol's guests are Corey Jenke and Victoria Reynolds. I'm your producer, Keith Vachon, and now your host, Carol Wayne.
Well, hello there, everyone, and welcome to the Reinvention Show, the one and only show that educates, entertains, and inspires you on your journey for reinvention. Today, I will be talking with my guests, Victoria and Corey, about reinventing your beliefs so that you can reinvent your life. It's a really cool topic because I had that problem myself, and I know that both Corey and Victoria have also had to reinvent their beliefs to reinvent their lives. So it's going to be a great show, and let's get started with Corey. So, welcome, Corey.
Thank you. Welcome. Excited to be here.
Corey is a full-time community pharmacist, the creator of the Prescription for Sanity, and the author of the soon-to-be-released parable book, What a Lousy Story. Corey is also a high-performance business and life coach, certified by the John Maxwell Company and the Bob Burke Go-Giver team. Corey's belief in reinvention is so strong that he's currently working with Steve Olsher to become a certified reinvention specialist as well. And those are some pretty amazing people that you've teamed up with, Corey. And Steve's going to be on the show in a few weeks, so that's cool.
How fun is that?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that too. So today's show is all about reinventing your beliefs. From your experience, what are the most common types of beliefs that people have that need a reinvention, that are in need of a reinvention?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that most people actually take their beliefs as facts. You know, when they tell themselves these stories, and of course, as you said, you've told yourself the stories, and I've told myself the stories, and so has Victoria, they actually believe them. They buy into them as if they are the gospel and that they're the God's honest truth. And when reality is that most of the time, those beliefs are based on a lie. So they come across as things like, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough time. I'm too old. I'm a woman trying to make it in a man's world. I'm a man trying to understand all these people, and being a man, I'm not sensitive to other people's feelings. I can't care about my associates and my employees because then I'll lose control. All of those things are statements that we love to believe are facts, but in fact, they're just our version of reality. And so quite frankly, our version of reality should always be in question and always be determined by us and not by beliefs that have been programmed by people that we don't even remember anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about programming. And that's why we have to unprogram. So do you see a common denominator with the beliefs that women have, like the self-limiting beliefs that women have and the self-limiting beliefs that men have, or are they the same?
Well, you know, I used to think that women and men were drastically different. I used to think that women were from Venus and men were from Mars. But the older I get, the more I'm buying into the idea that we're all really just spiritual beings. We're more or less containers of energy walking around. I think that what happens is because we're female or because we're male, we tend to use that as the narrative for our story. So for instance, you know, I'm a female and I can't make it in a man's world because ... Well, I'm a man, and you know, the politics of the day won't allow me the same fairness because of quotas and so forth. But the reality is that we all have the same basic problems when we refuse to reinvent ourselves. Those are problems that tell you, you know, I don't have enough energy. I've got to take care of everyone else first. Obviously, women are more prone to that one. We've got to take care of the whole entire world, and then if we get to us, then, you know, everything will be fine and we'll work on our dream someday. The problem with that is that when we put everyone else first, we don't bring to the table the person that would really benefit them. And so what I mean is I'll say to women, I'll say, Carol, you know, what's going on in your life? And you go, well, Susie's got a soccer game and Jimmy's got a football game and I'm doing this one for Molly. And you say, well, Carol, what about your life? And Carol struggles because she doesn't have a life. Well, what happens is the kids then begin to view Carol as somebody who's more or less a chauffeur, with no real personality and no real, I hate to say it out loud, but no real value to offer anybody but them. I personally believe the kids are much, much more benefited by mom who goes out and takes care of her goals, her dreams, and incorporates their goals and dreams in with that. Would that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. And when the kids see mom going for her dream, then she's leading by example, and they'll learn to do it as well. So yeah, absolutely, that's great.
And then conversely, then dad says, well, I can't work on my dreams because I'm too busy. Instead of investing in a seminar that I know would really benefit me, I'm too busy buying shoes and clothes and saving for college. So my dreams don't really have any validity, which is in fact what dad uses to get out of putting higher expectations on himself and raising himself to a higher standard. Because dad has been able to buy into that story that, hey, you know what? I can't do all the things that I would do. I can't be the shining example that I would otherwise be because of all my responsibilities. And so while those would seem like sexual differences, they're really positional differences. Because I think the same thing would be true then if you flipped the roles and had a stay-at-home dad and a working mom. And so I think that's what's happening is that we all are kind of struggling to find our place, to find out what the actual truth is behind our realities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And even with families where both of the parents are working, and one of the belief systems that really drives me crazy is this belief that you've got to have your kids up at 4 o'clock for skating, and then they've got swimming, and then they've got school, and then they've got Mandarin classes, and then they've got, and they're just running ragged from the moment that you like wake them up in the middle of the night to start their activities. And then mom and dad are so exhausted, the kids are so exhausted, and no one's really actually having very much fun. So that's one of my big pet peeves about societal.
I agree with that, and I think a large part of that is that because mom and dad are now looking back and vicariously trying to live through their kids. I wish that when I was younger, I would have had the chance to do A. So since I can't do that because of my responsibilities and my willingness to put everyone else first, then I can live that life through Susie. We want to believe that we didn't have the opportunities that we are giving Susie, but what we did is we didn't capitalize on the opportunities that we had at the time, and now we're trying to go back and reframe that into a belief that we never had them. And quite frankly, like you said, now Susie's not having any fun, so she's not going to maximize those opportunities anyway because they're not her opportunities, they're yours.
Right. And my husband and I were out for a walk the other day, and we were talking about how when we were younger that we would basically get kicked out the door in the morning and come home before it got dark. And we had so much freedom, and we were talking about how we wondered if our parents actually knew just how much trouble we were getting. But it was a very different life for us, our generation, who were not micromanaged from the moment we got up. So I'm sure there's a happy balance in there just somewhere.
I agree, yeah. So we really have to just examine the stories that we're telling ourselves about why are we doing this? Why are we involving Susie in all of these things and Jimmy and all of these things? And a large part of it is, like I said, we're trying to live vicariously through them. But also, many of us are concerned about what the neighbors think or the other parents think or what grandma and grandpa think. Are we not giving enough opportunities to our children, enough chances to get good at stuff? And I think the most intelligent parents, they do something like this. They say, okay, you get one thing or you get two things. What are they going to be? At least that's my philosophy on it.
Yeah, well, it's mine too, and that's what we did with the kids. They each got one thing, and with my elder daughter, it was horseback riding, and with my younger daughter, it was soccer. So it was really manageable for me as the mom, and for my husband to be able to support both the kids with the activities that they wanted to do. So that's good. So
I hate to cut you off, but I would also argue that one of the things that happens is that your kids actually begin to have tremendous respect for you and your goals. One of the things that I told my son, he's 11, he's Christopher, he's wonderful. I told him, I said, you know what, I can't be driving you everywhere because I got goals that I'm working on too. And he knows, for instance, that this week I've been listening to a program called The Power by Rhonda Byrne, who's the lady that did The Secret. So we get in the car yesterday. I'm going to take him swimming in the afternoon, you know, him and I recreational swimming. He says, Dad, can we listen to The Power? I really like that. And I got to believe that that's going to benefit him as much or more than being in 10 different activities and not having any idea who his dad even is.
yeah, and you know, that just reminds me, I took my daughter, my younger daughter, and my nephew to Peak Potentials, to Millionaire Mind Weekend. And the number of people that came up to me and said, wow, what an opportunity you are giving these kids, was, I lost count. And both the kids, it was a little bit too much for them at one point, but just to go through that with them was incredible. And at one point my daughter said, Mom, there's an awful lot of messed up people in this world. I'm like, yeah, there are. So let's talk about that messed up. So we've got these self-limiting beliefs, and we know that it is not in our best interest to believe those. Why is it that some people just won't take the step, or can't take the step, or feel that they're not worthy of taking the step to change those self-beliefs?
I believe it's a function of two things. The first of which is there is a huge difference, Carol, between what you believe that you believe, so what you say you believe or what you think you believe, and what you actually believe. Now, that's what a lot of people would call your conscious versus your subconscious. So I say, if I ask you a question like, Carol, do you think that all people are created equal? Well, you have an immediate answer. But then when I watch you, are you going to behave in a way that's congruent with that? And so what I mean is that most of the time, people will act in a way that shows you that they don't have the confidence that they need, that they really do believe that there's a scarcity of money, and that they don't have time. So what we got to do if we want to be successful in rewriting our beliefs is we've got to go ahead and actually do the exercises that bring that out. So if I say, Carol, what is the most important thing to you? Immediately, you've got something that pops into your mind, but you've also got something that pops into your chest. And quite frankly, we want to go with the one that's in our mind because we think that's the one that we're supposed to say, that's the one that society wants to hear. But if our heart's not congruent with that, we're not changing anything.
No, I know. And so if you were to ask me that question, I would say the most important thing in my life is freedom. And I do live a lot of that, but there are still things that I do behavior-wise that limits my freedom. So I'm still working on that myself.
And that's the key. It's okay to feel that incongruence. But what a lot of us do then is we just stifle it really quick before anyone notices, especially us. So instead, what you got to do is you got to take that time to get still and relax and think through, okay, what really is important to me? What makes my heart sing? What is it that I love to do? And what is it that I hate to do? Now, normally the word hate is not part of my vocabulary. And I was telling Steve Olsher this in an email because I'm going through his book and his training, like I said. And one of the things he's got is, you know what? Let's talk about what you hate to do, and let's put it in order. What do you hate to do the most? And I said, Steve, you know what's so funny? I don't normally have the word hate in my vocabulary because I'm an extremely positive person. I said, so it was really funny when I'm trying to do this exercise and the word bureaucracy and bureaucrat keep popping up. And he laughed with me as well. So the thing is, but you've got to sit down and really go through those exercises and discover yourself. And when you have those feelings, when you know you're uncomfortable or anxious because you're saying something and you know that your beliefs are really on a heart-to-heart level are contraindicating what you're saying, it's really important that you examine that. You say, well, who am I really? And you know what, Carol? It's okay to be who you really are. Yeah. So many of us believe that, you know, the world wants us to be a certain way, God wants us to be a certain way, Jesus wants us to be a certain way, and so we're so afraid to be Carol or Corey or Victoria. And quite frankly, the people that are out there killing it, that are crushing it, that are living the life they were born to live are the people that have finally got to a point where they've reinvented themselves according to their true self.
Yeah, absolutely. And finding that true self is a process. And we'll talk about this a little later in the show. For me, it was a very, very ugly process. Lots of Kleenex, but it is so different now that I'm through it. And now that I can see that I have these quadruplets of discontent, which is these four little people inside me that try and tell me things that aren't true. And I'll just explain those very quickly since I brought them up. It's victim. Victim came out for me when my business went south, and I just couldn't do it. I just didn't have and I had all these excuses, and I was the victim. Then saboteur is the other one, and you know exactly what you need to do, but you just don't do it because you don't want to. And there go your goals, and there go your dreams. And you know you're really doing that to yourself because usually you're afraid. And then there is the fraudster, and this one pops up for me every once in a while. That imposter syndrome. Who am I to be the queen of reinvention? Who am I to put myself out there to say that I can help transform business and blah blah blah? And the fraudster pops up all the time, and I'm like, stop it! No, I got this. I've earned this. And then the last one is the hypocrite. And that's the person that tells you not to live this life that you know that you were meant to live. So there you go. There's my little training for today. I wasn't intending to do that, and I took up some of your time. Sorry, Corey.
No, I applaud you for sharing that, because I think all four of those people exist in every single person. And that's another part of the big lie, that I'm the only one who really doubts myself. Darren Hardy from Success Magazine, he doesn't doubt himself. Richard Branson, he doesn't doubt himself. Of course they do. Every single day, those guys are thinking, man, I really, what is it? They just do it on a different level. They've gotten to a different comfort level because of all the chances that they've taken. In fact, I just watched a video from Bob Proctor. He's 80 years old and he's made millions and millions of dollars, and he said, I won't set a goal unless it scares me to death. Wow. And I think, what would you have to be afraid of? You're Bob Proctor, right? We're all afraid. We're all imposters. We all have that person that says, who do you even think you are? Mm-hmm. But quite frankly, the world needs us to crash through what Bob Proctor called the terror barrier. Yes, it scares me, but I'm going through it anyway. Because on the other side of the terror barrier is that freedom you mentioned. Yeah. And that's worth it. I think that most of the time we convince ourselves that the journey isn't going to be worth the uncomfort. But you're going to be uncomfortable anyway, because you're going to be saying to yourself, you know what, I could have made that happen, but I wouldn't do it. That to me is much, much worse than going down in a ball of flames.
Yeah, and like you said, the more chances you take, the easier it is to recover from those failures, or lessons, as I like to call them. And on your deathbed, you don't want to be saying, oh, I should have done that, or I could have done that, or why wasn't I brave enough to do that? Just go and do it. Just take that leap, and as my friend Lisa said, take that leap and the safety net appears. It always does.
It's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
No, and just face that fear straight on. And I've talked about this in the other shows. The reason why I started doing my show in the first place was because I was afraid of the camera. So here I am looking at it right now. And, the very first time I was on camera, it was awful. Like, I've left the video on my YouTube channel because it is so awful. And also to remind me that I've come a long way. And so that's also part of your reinvention process, is to recognize how far you've come and to congratulate yourself on how far you've come with all the different aspects of your reinvention. So thank you very much, Corey. We'll get back to you shortly when we'll have a little powwow. But right now we're going to talk to our resident expert, Victoria Reynolds. Hey, Victoria.
Hey, Carol.
Long time no see. Long time no speak. Long time no have you on my show. welcome back.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here.
So Victoria is known as a personal worth expert. She is the author of the book Transcending Fear and is an award-winning speaker. The focus of her work is teaching women how to find the clarity and confidence to earn what they're really worth. So Victoria, why don't you explain to us your tiara? Why are you wearing your tiara today?
My tiara. And the reason I decided to wear this today is because as women, there is a queen that's inside of every one of us. And I say queen because I think we need to get beyond this idea of princess. There are so many of us who were raised with, in varying degrees, with this belief that we needed to be rescued by a man. And we have a proverbial pair of glass slippers in our closet. And the reason I say this is because a lot of us are unintentionally and unconsciously keeping ourselves small. And these are teeny tiny little shoes. If I remember, Cinderella had very small feet. She had to keep herself small to fit in them. So every once in a while we go back in our closet and see if the shoes still fit and hope that somebody will rescue us. And the truth is that it's really time for us to rescue ourselves. One of the things I'm loving about the new princess story, so I have a daughter that's 11 years old, and so I get to see all the new movies that are coming out. And the new story that's being told is that the prince and the princess work together against the villain. So it's no longer about the girl being rescued. However, we have eons, centuries of girls growing up with this belief that we are worth less. And that's one of the beliefs that we need to start working through. So I wore my tiara because in order to become a queen, to be the queen that you are, you don't need to be rescued, you don't need to knock off the prince. It's inside every one of us. And when a queen is really in her queendom, she's very powerful. And I think that part of this is learning how to understand that there's a very powerful woman that's inside of every one of us once we shatter our glass slippers.
Right. Cool. Now, did you, speaking of the animated movies, did you see Frozen?
I love Frozen. Yes. I've seen it numerous times. And my daughter just had her 12th birthday party over the weekend, and I had a whole room full of girls. We were watching Frozen. It was hysterical. They all broke into song and started singing the songs every time they came up. It's such a great movie.
It is, and you certainly learn not to fall in love with the first prince.
Yeah. Well, he turned out to be quite a deceptive shyster.
Not very nice at all. So,
and you know, and that part of what I loved about that movie, two lessons that I see from that movie. One was that family is everything, and not to let a man come between you and your family. And the other thing that I saw from that, which is everything that I teach, is that love is more powerful than fear.
Very good.
Yeah. So everything that I teach is based on this idea that most of us are making choices in our life from a place of fear rather than from a place of love. And once we understand the role that fear plays in our life, then we can infuse love into our life, and love then has the power to change everything. It can change the world once we know what it really is.
So let's talk about personal worth.
Personal worth. You know, I'll start back with the beliefs. Where our beliefs come from, for most of us as adults, we have no idea where our beliefs came from. And most of them were invented, literally put on us when we were children. Very, very, very young. Our parents, a society, our religions, our schools, our teachers, the television, fed us this stuff that as little children we weren't able to disseminate between what is and isn't real. So it just became our belief system. Then we also created beliefs when we were really small about things that were going on in our world and how to make sense of them. For example, I was working with a client who, as we were trying to uncover some of her unconscious limiting beliefs, where she said, oh my gosh, I had this belief when I was a kid that I could have love or I could have money, but I couldn't have both because my parents were always gone. And the only time they were around, they just bought me something because they felt guilty about not spending any time with me. So she had the belief, very unconsciously, that if she was successful in life, she couldn't also have love. That's an example of a belief that she created when she was very small to explain why her parents didn't love her very much, or why she didn't get to see her parents very much. Then I have another client who created a belief when she was quite young that when she would travel with her family to other countries, that she was embarrassed to be a wealthy American. And as an American entrepreneur, she literally has this barrier that she's created to her own income and her own wealth because she had this very subconscious belief that she was ashamed to be a wealthy American. And it was a belief that she created when she was really small. So there are some of these really, really deeply rooted unconscious beliefs that we don't even know are controlling us until we start digging into them and find out that that's actually what plays into our own idea of worth. You know, I don't deserve to have money because I'm ashamed of having money, or I don't deserve to have money because if I do, then I won't also be able to have love. So that's part of that self-worth. And then we also have, you know, a lot of us, speak personal experience anyway, and I know that other kids were raised with parents who said, I'm ashamed of you should be ashamed of yourself, and you need to feel guilty about that, and you don't deserve that, and oh, that happened to you because you deserve it. And the really very belittling beliefs that create these feelings of worthlessness. And I do think some of that happens more with women than with men. There are some women who were fortunate enough to be raised with parents who uplifted them and told them they could be anything they wanted to be. And at the same time, the pervasive belief on the planet has been that women are worth less. So even though the conscious belief is, I deserve this just as much as any man, the unconscious belief is that women are still worth less. And that's been thousands of years on our planet. It's something that is taking a while to undo. And that a woman's gifts, if a woman has the same gift as a man, that she doesn't make as much money because she can't. That is changing. It used to be that if a man painted pictures, he was a master. If a woman painted, she had to do it behind closed doors and couldn't make any money with it. So these innately feminine gifts were basically in some cases seen as evil. You know, if a man spoke to God, he was a prophet. If a woman spoke to God, she was a witch. So there's a lot of very underlying fear still with a woman stepping out and seeing her own worth and asking to be compensated for the same work and the same value and the same gifts as a man. It's completely unconscious belief in a lot of cases. And in some cases, for example, the way I was raised, where I was literally told from the time I was born that I was of no worth unless a man was taking care of me, finding that worth in myself was a long, long process of 40-something plus years before I finally started to go, oh, okay, no. I choose to no longer believe what I was raised with, that I'm just as valuable as anyone else. Finding that true worth and finding that true value is a process of digging down through the layers and finding those individual unconscious beliefs and working through them. There's layers and layers and layers of unconscious beliefs. And as Corey was saying, if the unconscious beliefs are out of alignment with the conscious beliefs, you're stuck. You're like stuck up against a wall that's really hard to break through until you align your unconscious beliefs with your conscious beliefs, or what I call your truths.
Mm-hmm. Now, interestingly, I don't usually follow American politics. I'm Canadian. But I was just looking on, I don't know, some news website about, I think it was a woman in the GOP, I'm not sure, but she just recently said that women should be making less than men because women won't find husbands if they're making more. Like, oh, that is so antiquated. Like, where is she coming from? But I guess we're still hearing it from society.
Yeah, it's still part of the pervasive belief. So as long as that is the pervasive unconscious belief, literally in the greater consciousness, we have our individual battles that we fight inside ourselves. Now, what's interesting is that once we change our own individual beliefs and start to share that outward, those new beliefs become part of the greater consciousness. And unfortunately, evolution takes time. But it's up to each one of us individually to create new beliefs that are more empowering. And as we feed that out into the world, it becomes part of the new belief system. So I'm a firm believer that it's all about each one of us individually finding our own individual worth and then holding that new consciousness. Yeah.
So how do you go about reinventing beliefs?
Ay, ay, ay.
Grab the Kleenex box first.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's a process, or as you call it, a process. a lot of Kleenex, because you really have to start to challenge everything you think you believe. It's literally everything, and every little voice that comes up in your head saying, "Is this true or not?" And the way that you can tell the difference is that if it is loving, if it is supportive, if it is empowering, if it makes you feel light and vibrant, it's true. If it is heavy, if it is limiting, if it makes you feel depressed or sad or dark or restricted in any way, it's false. And that's the easiest way that I can say to start to realize the difference between what is true and what is not true. What is an internal truth for you, and what is an external belief that you picked up someplace else and bought into as truth, or that you created as a way of explaining your reality that you bought into as truth. Your truth is very different. Truth is always based in love. It will always lift you up. It will always empower you, and it will always give you the courage to go out there and be who you really are, and not all of these false fear-based expectations that the world has. So part of that's that incongruency, as Corey was saying, of trying to meet up everyone else's expectations instead of really holding true into who you are individually. And every one of us has our own truth. What's true for me isn't necessarily going to be true for anyone else, because I'm a unique individual. I'm here with my own unique gifts, my own unique purpose, and my own unique experiences. So what's true for me is not going to be true for someone else. And unfortunately, we go around trying to compare ourselves to everyone else and trying to be like someone else instead of really embracing who we really are and our unique purpose.
Right. Now, one of the best things that I did for myself to help me reinvent my beliefs was to get a coach. And while I was working with her, she would always say to me, "Is that an illusion of yours?"
Mm-hmm.
And quite often it was. Like, well, it probably was all the time. I just didn't admit it some of the time. So really I strongly recommend that you work with someone to help you as you go through it, because as you start peeling back the layers of your own onion, stuff does come up, and it's really important that you've got the support there for you to change your beliefs. So, well, that's really awesome, Victoria. Now we're all going to talk about what self-limiting beliefs we've all had and how we managed to work through them. I've already shared a bit about myself, so I won't be hogging the mic in this segment, but Victoria, perhaps we can start with you. A little bit about your backstory is certainly going to be useful at this point, so could you tell everyone? I
have a really unique backstory. It's probably not too many people on this planet that can say this. I was raised in a fundamentalist polygamist cult in Montana. That's a very, very small community. Actually, it was only 6 families when I was born, and there's about a whopping 500 population now.
Oh.
So this environment I was raised in was very, very restrictive. And it literally, from the time I was born, I was told that the sole purpose for my existence was to have as many babies as I possibly could. And that a woman's worth was dependent entirely on the number of babies she produced and the number of wives that she let her husband have. And that I couldn't go to heaven unless I let my husband have at least 3 wives. So, and the women that I knew didn't work. They didn't have jobs. They didn't work outside the home. They didn't drive. They literally our entire lives existed for just making babies and taking care of babies. And they didn't have an education. And so I was really, even as a little girl, I was 4 years old that I stumbled on this magazine of women in the outside world. And I knew that that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. I just had decided I was 4 years old. I didn't want to be like any of the women around me. I wanted to be like the women I saw in this magazine. It was one of those aha moments, that changes your entire life. And that's always what I was striving for. From that moment, it was never my goal in life to be a stay-at-home mom and to be taken care of and to get an allowance from my husband. Even though that's all that I saw around me, I knew that's what I didn't want. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I just knew what I didn't want to be. And so a lot of things happened. The easiest way to say it is that in such a male-dominated environment, there were things that happened to me emotionally, physically, and sexually that by the time I was a teenager, I just wanted to kill myself. I absolutely hated myself so much that I just wanted to die. And when I was 17, I basically had to choose whether I was going to kill myself or find a way out of the community. And obviously, I found a way out, because here I am. And finding myself and finding my true worth was a very long process. That took mainly about the next 5 years. I was suicidal for about the next 5 years, and then a friend of mine introduced me to self-help books, and that completely changed my life. Suddenly I was getting these messages in these books that said I could do something with my life, and that I was more valuable than what I had thought I was, and that it was okay to not believe what my parents had believed. And started to fill me up with ideas that what God really wanted was nothing like what I had been told God wanted, that the only thing that my life really needed to be was joyful, and that I could find that inside myself. So I started creating a relationship with myself, and I started to like myself. And as a result of learning how to like myself, my life shifted to follow suit. It wasn't like I had all the money and stuff first, and then I decided to like myself. I had to like myself first. And then in my 40s, one of my businesses had collapsed in 2008. A lot of people can relate with that year.
Yep.
My business collapsed, and I was devastated, and I found myself with these thoughts of suicide again. And what I realized is that I had spent the last 5 years, because I had 2 babies at the time, that I had spent all of my time sacrificing myself to everyone else, and there was nothing left of me. I literally sacrificed myself to death, which unfortunately a lot of women do, because we have this misconception that that's what we have to do, that we have to give ourselves to death and that we can't give anything to ourselves. Part of that was the belief, still little sneaky beliefs from my childhood that were still very unconsciously ruling my life, and I didn't even know that they were. And so anyway, in my mid-40s, I went through this whole process of rediscovering myself, which is, what my book is about, and everything that I teach now, which is, okay, let's get to the root of not just what your current belief is, but where did it come from? How deep do we need to dig before we find the root of that belief? And then apply tools and self-forgiveness and other aspects to it so that it no longer has any control, and it no longer even exists as an aspect in your life. So that's where I was. And since losing my business and finding myself, I've discovered what my true purpose is, and that's what I do today, is help other women find their true purpose.
Awesome. Thanks very much for sharing with us, Victoria. So, Corey, what have you reinvented in your own belief system? And a little bit about your backstory, too.
Well, I think there's 2 parts to it. The first part was that I had told myself this story that I was all I was ever going to be. I got out of college and I hit it right on the head right away. I was very popular with my customers. I was killing it in my career. And I just told myself this story that that's what I was supposed to do, stand there and work till I retire. And then what happened was that I got to be in my early to mid-40s, and I realized that, I've got more to offer, but I'm stuck in this existence. And it really came to a head for me when I went to the John Maxwell conference. I went to the John Maxwell conference for a lot of different reasons that had nothing to do with what I'm doing now, except that when people would ask me, Corey, what are you going to do with this information? I kept hearing myself say sentences that started out like, well, you got to understand, or I'm just this guy that, and it was irritating me to death, except that I kept doing it over and over. You know, there's 300-400 people in there, and they're all social and outgoing, and they keep asking me this question. And that's when I really began to understand what Victoria was talking about, in that what you've got to do is dig really, really deep and say, where did that even come from? You know, why do I believe that? And is it even true? Is who I am and what I am defined by what I do for a living? No, it's not. It's the skills and it's the love that I bring to my job that defines me. It's not the job that I do or where I do it or the money that I make. It's what do I bring to the table. And so I had to have a lot of those similar discussions about, you know what, okay, what am I going to do going forward? So I listened to something Brian Tracy said, and this is what I did. I took a notebook, a spiral notebook, and I drove to a Famous Dave's restaurant, which is about 90 minutes from here. And I made up my mind that I was not going to leave that restaurant until I had totally written out what was really, really, really important to me as far as I knew, and what my life was going to look like going forward. And I filled it up, and then it was funny because I stopped at a different restaurant on the way home, and I filled up another half of one. My hand hurt so bad at the end of the day, but my body for the first time in 20 years felt like I was 50 pounds lighter. So I think what happened is that you learn as you get older, you know what, the clock is ticking, and there's this disease called it could never happen to me. I don't ever want to suffer that disease called it could never happen to me again. And so I had to get really real with, okay, what you did was you created this nice artificial little glass house that if you didn't step out of it, you didn't have to worry about getting hurt. You didn't have to worry about risking anything. You didn't have to worry about losing anything. And I tell you, it's been very, very fascinating because every time I step out, it works for me because I have this long-standing belief that everything works for me. My wife will tell you, everything works out for me. So what I had to do then is marry the two and realize that, you know what, in order to truly find out if belief number one, everything works out for me, is true, I have to step out and take chances. I have to step out and do things that are risky, but like you said, the bigger risk is getting to a stage in your life and going, man, I missed it.
Yeah.
Now, as a pharmacist, you know, where a lot of that comes from is I've been a pharmacist for 25 years in a small town in northern Wisconsin. And so now I've watched people go from 20 to 45. I've watched people go from 45 to 70, and I've watched people go from 70 to dead. And almost every single person looked at me along the way and says, you know, I could have done more. I could have been more. I could have had more. I could have meant more. And probably most importantly, I could have loved a whole lot more. I really got to tell you that I really love what Victoria said about when you talk to yourself, if it's not loving, if it's not supportive, then you know it's probably not true. I thought the way she said it was just brilliant.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for that too, Victoria. Yeah. So, do you want to continue, Corey?
Well, I was just going to say that, so it's a process. One of the things that was a really bad belief of mine was that I couldn't control my own thoughts. I used to believe, before I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, I used to believe that my brain had a mind of its own, and that it was just the squirrel cage that was going to go wherever it went. But that's really and truly not true. If you sit down, it takes practice. And you've got to find a spot where you get still and you actually listen to what's going on. And you question it, like Victoria said. And you talk to yourself and tell yourself, you know, I don't think that's true because, you know, your thoughts are really just electrical impulses. And probably none of us has any idea how many of those electrical impulses are untrue. I like what Dr. Daniel Amen said about the brain. He's the leading brain specialist in America as far as I know. And he said this, he said, everybody has thoughts that no one else should ever hear. That's fine, just let them go. Don't have any energy put into those thoughts. And then redirect your thoughts to where they really should go that serves you. And then do those things that Victoria said. go ahead and find the thoughts that are loving, that are supportive, that are empowering. I'm a big also believer of surrounding yourself with better people. I was also under the belief at one time that the people that are built into your life are part of your life. They're built in. You can't do anything about that. And quite frankly, I have blood relatives that I refuse to talk to, not because I'm mean, not because I'm spiteful, but because they steal my motivation and they steal my momentum. And if they do that and I allow them to do that, then what I'm doing is allowing them to steal from the people that I can help with my message. So I'll give you an example. Victoria's out there helping tons and tons and tons of people, and she'd be stealing from the people that she's helping if she let other people hold her back. You know, by disallowing her mind to stay in the space she was in when she was 17, she has now helped countless people. So it required an incredible discipline on her part. It required incredible inner strength. But a lot of people would refuse to get rid of the people in her life that were holding her back. And by extension, then, they would be stealing from all the people that they could potentially help. Don't you think that's true?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So some of my self-limiting beliefs have come up even during the show. When Victoria was talking, I just had this thing from my gran come up, like, that's God punishing you. She used to say that to me all the time. Or you'll go to the bad fire for that. Or I remember my mom used to tell me, and my gran actually, that if I didn't behave, they would put me in the orphanage. So all of these things came up about, I must behave, I must do this, and if I don't, I'm going to be punished. And so, you know, I rebelled big time as a teenager, and I'm still a bit rebellious now. It's like, don't tell me what to do. So, but just hearing Victoria say that, and I just went, oh my God, I felt it coming back up again, and that's when I check in with myself, and I'm like, which of my quads is coming to play right now? And off you go. Yeah. So.
And I think the big thing is you can't settle for that. So many people want to tell us this story. I know that you guys both must hear it all the time. Well, I had all these horrible things happen to me as a child, so therefore going forward, I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
And you really are not who your current circumstances say you are. That's who you were. So your current situation and circumstances is only the sum total of who you were. Who you are going forward is what you choose to be. What your passion is, what your mission is what you say it is. So it's up to you to go forward now in spite of those beliefs and figure out how to change them. Victoria, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we create our own reality, and so many of us are just living our lives by default, assuming that it is what it is, and we are actually the creators of our reality. And who we choose to be can be a lump sum of everything we have been, and taking all of that, everything we've learned from those experiences, and not seeing them as failures or reasons to have a pathetic existence, learn from the experiences, and then take all of that wisdom and move forward into who it is we really want to be, and create. And we're all creators. We can create the life that we desire once we really own that we are valuable and that we are worth, and that our past doesn't define us. We can extract from our past all the lessons that we need and turn them into wisdom to create this life that we want. No one is stuck in their past. You don't have to be stuck there. It just is what it is. It was, and we don't have to drag it around behind us. It literally, as I've explained before, that once we understand the lessons we can extract from our past, they can actually become our wings to help us fly.
That's brilliant.
I love the way you said that.
Yeah. And it just reminded me, I just saw Sandra Yancey from the E-Women Network. I saw her in Victoria a couple of weeks ago, and she said something that I thought was just brilliant. And it was like, when your past comes calling, hang up. And she goes, and if you've got one of those caller ID just look and don't even answer the phone. So it really is important. And I worked with a gal who did my Reinvention challenge a year or so ago now. And she, when we got to this beliefs part of the Reinvention challenge, she felt like she'd hit a brick wall. It was so difficult for her. All sorts of stuff came up, like really bad compacted stuff that she had buried so deeply for so long. And the feelings were very, very acute and very scary for her. And then when she shared them with me, I was actually scared because I'm like, whoa, this is beyond my capabilities. So maybe we should get you the help that you need to get over this. And she did. And the change in her is phenomenal. I mean, her whole appearance, she's lost a ton of weight. She's doing stuff for herself first. Like, her kids had always been first, and now it's her. And she's at the gym all the time. She's just glowing. But she too also had that point where it was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, these feelings are so scary. Mm-hmm. But, you know, again, get the help that you need to get you through it and keep going, because your life will change so dramatically that you'll wonder why you haven't done it sooner.
and you know, so many people won't change their beliefs because they're afraid, well, if I remove this belief system, like you could pull a stick out of that game we used to play with the marbles. If I remove that belief system, then where am I going to go? Like, they're going to have no place to land.
Yeah. Right.
And quite frankly, that's where you make room to figure out who you actually are. You know, you've spent your whole life now having everyone else tell you who you are. And there's only really one person who can tell you who you are. And that person is the person you looked at in the mirror this morning. Your story is something that you can write going forward. You don't have to know all the answers. You only have to know what the next step is. And quite frankly, you'll be surprised how much energy you can have when you lift that baggage off your shoulders and just move forward in a whole different spirit. That's my biggest advice is don't worry about the second step until you've taken the first step. Because no one who's ever done anything has ever seen the entire path before they took the road.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying, like, people will say, well, where are you going to be 5 years from now? And I'm like, I have no idea. I have no idea where I'm going to be 2 weeks from now. That's okay, and that's fine with me. So you just keep taking that step, and the opportunities that present themselves to you because you're now thinking in a different way are incredible. And then you get closer and closer to your ideal life. And for me, this is happening today. Like, when I finish this show, I head off to the airport for a flight to another city to do a sales pitch. And then I fly back the same day. And to me, this is part of my ideal life. It's a jet-setting, freedom kind of life. So would this have happened if I hadn't gone through my process or continue to go through my process and reinvent my beliefs? No. I would still be on that couch having a pity party like it was 2009. So
I think that's a big key, too, is that it really is a process. You know, success is not a place where you get to and the lights go off and the sirens go off and everybody comes and celebrates. It's a process. It's going through the motions, but knowing that you're a better Carol than you were in 2009. Knowing that you're a better Victoria, infinitely better, than you were at 17. Knowing that the Victoria and the Carol that I'm going to talk to in 5 years is infinitely bigger than the Victoria and the Carol I'm talking to today, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Victoria and I are going to be on this massive stage together, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Don't know what the stage is yet, but we're going to be on a stage together.
Yeah. You know, so Victoria, you've been quiet. Let's hear a little bit more.
I'm enjoying listening to both of you. Yeah, the process. So one of the things that Corey was talking about was, and you also, that in order to find out who we really are, we have to be willing to start peeling off the layers of what I call be willing to disbelieve. And that's really, really scary, as Corey mentioned, because it's like, oh well, if I choose to not believe this, well then what? It's a very frightening place to be for a lot of people. It's like starting something new for a lot of people is very scary. And so as we peel off these layers of old beliefs that really don't serve us, then what? And what's there is truth. And as we peel off these layers of literally dark, heavy beliefs that restrict our heart, then we're able to find our own light and our own truth. And that allows us to be who we're really here to be, and no longer afraid of what the rest of the world is going to think of us if we pursue who we really know we are. We can't get to that person. We can't get to that space of joy and fulfillment as long as we have these beliefs that restrict it. So we need to, it's a matter of choosing. One, I choose to work through all of my beliefs because I want to be happy, and I'm tired of complaining. I'm tired of feeling like I'm worthless. I'm tired of feeling like I can't succeed. I'm tired of feeling like life needs to, like there's something more to life. And if you want to get to that point where you have a life where you wake up every day with a silly ass grin on your face like I do most of the time, you got to be willing to peel off all the layers of misperceptions and beliefs that simply are not true. And it's, you know, as we've all three have said, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And success isn't this instant thing. One of my dreams is to make films about how people really get to success, because all we see is the person was born and then suddenly, wow, that person's instantly successful. We don't see all the trials and all the struggles and all the stuff that it took for someone to get to that level of success, because so few people are willing to tell the truth about their own struggles and how they got to where they are. And that's what people need more than anything, is to say, oh, yeah, even Bill Gates and Steve Jobs had major issues in their life. And they did. We know they did. Mm-hmm. And how often do we see the success stories and the journey that it took to get successful? And they probably had to do a lot of unbelieving as well to get to the point of success. Yeah.
Does anyone have any parting words? We're getting to the top of the hour. And I can hear the jet planes flying overhead right now.
your plane is calling, is that it?
Well,
the main thing that I want people to realize is that, you know what, if not now, then when? And if not you, then who? Somebody out there needs to hear what it is that your heart wants to say, as much or more than you need to say it. So if you can't do it for yourself, if you're really having trouble believing in yourself, then borrow my belief in you, borrow Victoria's belief in you, borrow Carol's belief in you, and step out in faith for that person you know you were born to help. That's my best advice to anyone, is just borrow that strength from someone until you find out that you really can do it, because you can. The only person stopping you is you. And isn't it about time that you stop doing that?
Very wise words, Corey. Thank you. And Victoria, any parting words from you?
Yeah, just a little bit on what Corey said, which is that every person is born for greatness. It doesn't mean that you have to, stand on a mountaintop and change the world and do it to the degree that we're doing it. It means that there's a greatness that's inside of every one of us, and that it's really, really important to surround yourself with people who support you in finding your greatness and finding your worth. And it is okay to say goodbye to family and friends that don't support you in owning your true value and your true worth. Read books that support your goal for a happy life. Surround yourself with friends who support you. And if there's anyone in your life who is degrading you, you don't have to stay in that relationship. Ultimately, it all comes down to honoring yourself and honoring who you know deep inside you have the ability to be, which is unlimited. And those would be my parting words.
Awesome, thank you. Now, as you know, I always ask my guests if they have a gift for the the audience. So do we have a gift from either of you two?
I have one.
You do? I knew you would.
I am gifting free one-on-one personal mentoring sessions to help you find your true value.
Wow.
And you can apply for those. They are by application only. I need to know where you are in your life presently so that I know how to help you going forward. So you can go to victoriareynolds.com/reinvention and apply for a personal session with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Victoria.
You're welcome.
And I have a free ebook out there called thefreeebook.com, which is an ebook about how do you beat the 7 strategies for, how do you have the 7 strategies for beating fear, anxiety, and depression. I think a large part of why people don't do well is they don't feel well, and I think a great way to do that is to learn to do some of those things we've already talked about. Change your beliefs, get some things off your plate, and to get that, all you do is go to thefreeebook.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Well, there you go. Another awesome Reinvention show. Join us next week, Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time for the next Reinvention show. Also, be sure to go to thereinventionshow.com and put your name and email in, and you will receive the gifts that all of our guests give, like from the moment that you sign up. So go ahead and pop in your name and email, and you'll start receiving those emails with the gifts. And remember, we love to have your comments, so please put your comments in the box below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on the Reinvention Show website. So until next time, ciao, and thank you very much, Victoria and Corey, and Keith, my producer.